Robert Mitchell stood in his living room, hands pressed against his head, watching something that terrified him more than anything else in his 42 years of life. His daughter, Emma, lay on the couch. She was only 8 years old. Her small chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Her blonde doll rested beside her. The pink blanket that her grandmother had knitted covered her thin frame. The doctors had been clear. 48 hours. Maybe less. Emma's rare blood disorder had stopped responding to treatment. Her body was shutting down. The hospital had sent them home. There was nothing more they could do. Robert's world had collapsed. That morning, a woman had knocked on their door. Her name was Grace Williams. She wore an orange and white nurse's uniform. She was in her mid-30s, with kind eyes and a calm presence that seemed to fill the room the moment she entered. "Mr. Mitchell," she said softly. "The home care agency sent me. I'm here to help with Emma." Robert had barely managed to nod. He couldn't speak. His throat was too tight with grief. Grace moved to the couch where Emma lay. She knelt down beside the child. Her movements were gentle, purposeful. She didn't rush. "Hello, Emma," Grace said, her voice warm as summer honey. "My name is Grace. I'm going to take care of you for a while. Is that okay?" Emma's eyelids fluttered open. She managed a tiny nod. Robert watched from across the room. He felt like he was drowning, like the walls were closing in. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Grace worked quietly through that first afternoon. She checked Emma's vitals. She adjusted her pillows. She spoke to the little girl in soft tones, telling her stories about the birds she'd seen that morning, about the clouds that looked like cotton candy. Emma didn't have the strength to respond much, but her eyes followed Grace, and something in her expression seemed a little less frightened. As evening approached, Grace prepared a special tea. She brought it to Emma's lips, helping her take tiny sips. "This has ginger and chamomile," Grace explained. "It'll help settle your stomach. My grandmother taught me this recipe when I was not much older than you." Robert wanted to say something, wanted to tell Grace that it wouldn't matter, that nothing would help now, but the words wouldn't come. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He sat in the chair by Emma's couch, watching her breathe, counting each breath, terrified that each one might be the last. Grace had stayed. She'd set up a small chair near the window. She dozed lightly, waking every hour to check on Emma. Around 3 in the morning, Emma stirred. She whimpered softly. Grace was on her feet instantly. She touched Emma's forehead, checked her pulse. Then she began humming, a gentle melody, something old and soothing. Emma's whimpering stopped. Her breathing evened out. Robert felt tears sliding down his face. He didn't bother wiping them away. The sun rose on what the doctor said would be Emma's last full day. Grace opened the curtains, letting soft morning light fill the room. She prepared another cup of her special tea. Then she did something unexpected. She pulled out a small bottle of essential oils from her bag. "Mr. Mitchell," she said quietly, "I'd like to try something. It's not medical. It's just comfort. Would that be all right?" Robert nodded. At this point, what did it matter? Grace dabbed lavender oil on Emma's wrists. She massaged the child's small hands with gentle circular motions. She spoke to Emma the whole time, telling her she was brave, that she was loved, that she didn't need to be afraid. Something shifted in the room. Robert couldn't explain it, but there was a warmth, a presence, something that felt like hope, even though hope seemed impossible. Throughout that day, Grace never left Emma's side. She read to her from a worn book of fairy tales. She sang softly when Emma seemed restless. She held the child's hand when Emma's eyes filled with tears. And she talked to Emma like she mattered, like her thoughts and feelings were important, even now, especially now. "You know what I think, Emma?" Grace said that afternoon. "I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You fought so hard. And whatever happens, that strength is a gift. It's something beautiful." Emma's lips moved. Grace leaned closer. "Am I going to die?" Emma whispered. Robert's heart shattered. He stood frozen across the room, unable to move. Grace didn't flinch. She didn't look away. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said honestly. "But I do know this. You're not alone. Your daddy loves you more than anything in the world, and I'm right here with you. We're all right here." Emma's small hand squeezed Grace's fingers. That evening, something remarkable happened. Emma asked for water. Not tea, water, and she drank half a glass by herself. Then she asked if she could hold her doll. Grace helped her sit up slightly, propping pillows behind her. Emma clutched her blonde doll to her chest. A tiny smile crossed her face. "She missed me," Emma said softly. Robert felt his knees go weak. He sank into a chair. Those were the most words Emma had spoken in 3 days. Grace stayed through the second night. Emma slept more peacefully than she had in weeks. Her breathing, while still labored, seemed less strained. In the early morning hours, Grace finally stepped outside for a moment. Robert followed her. They stood on the front porch. The sky was beginning to lighten. Birds were starting their morning songs. "I don't understand," Robert said, his voice hoarse. "The doctor said—" "I know what they said," Grace replied gently. "And they might still be right. But sometimes love and comfort can give people strength we don't expect. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone makes all the difference." She turned to look at him. Her eyes were tired but kind. "Your daughter is fighting. Mr. Mitchell, she's fighting because she knows how much you love her. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything." By the third day, something impossible was happening. Emma sat up on her own. Not for long, but she sat up. She ate 3 spoonfuls of soup that Grace had made. She asked to watch her favorite cartoon. She even laughed once, a soft sound that Robert thought he'd never hear again. Grace called the doctor. He came that afternoon, his face skeptical. But after examining Emma, his expression changed to wonder. "Her vitals are stronger," he said slowly. "Her blood pressure is up. Her color is better. I can't explain this." He ordered new tests, took new blood samples, shook his head in disbelief. "Sometimes," he finally said, "we see remissions, unexplained improvements. The human body is remarkable and mysterious." He looked at Grace. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Over the next 2 weeks, Emma continued to improve. Slowly, gradually, but unmistakably. Grace stayed every day. She continued her routine of gentle care, special teas, soothing words, and constant presence. Robert watched in amazement as his daughter came back to life. Emma started eating more, started talking more, started smiling again. The tests came back showing that her condition, while still serious, had stabilized. The crisis had passed. The doctors called it a spontaneous remission, a medical miracle. But Robert knew better. One evening, 3 weeks after Grace had first arrived, Robert found her in the kitchen preparing dinner. Emma was in the living room playing quietly with her dolls, actually playing, moving around, laughing softly. "I don't know how to thank you," Robert said. Grace turned to him. She smiled. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "I just did what any caregiver would do. I treated her with love." "No," Robert said firmly. "You did more than that. You gave her hope. You gave her peace. You made her feel worthy, even when she was dying." Grace's eyes glistened. "Every person is worthy, Mr. Mitchell, every single one. No matter how much time they have left. Emma deserved to be treated with dignity and love. That's all I did." Robert felt tears on his face again. But this time they were different. They were tears of gratitude. Emma made a full recovery over the next 6 months. It stunned her doctors. They ran countless tests, wrote papers about her case. They called it unprecedented. But Emma knew the truth. And so did Robert. On Emma's 9th birthday, Grace came to her party. She brought a special gift, a journal with a beautiful cover. "For writing your story," Grace told Emma. "Because your story matters. Every moment of it." Emma hugged her tight. "You saved my life," she whispered. Grace knelt down to look into the child's eyes. "No, sweetheart. You saved your own life by fighting. I just reminded you that you weren't fighting alone, that you were loved. Sometimes that's the most powerful medicine there is." Years later, Robert would still remember those 48 hours. How he'd thought his world was ending. How a stranger had walked into their home and brought something more powerful than any medicine. Not a cure, but compassion, presence, love. Grace had treated Emma like she mattered. Like her dignity and comfort were important, even at the very end. And somehow that had made all the difference. Emma grew up strong. She became a nurse herself, inspired by the woman who had cared for her. She learned to bring that same gentle presence to others in their darkest hours. And Robert learned something too, something he carried with him for the rest of his life. That sometimes the greatest miracles aren't the ones that defy medical science. They're the ones that happen when one human being sees another's suffering and chooses to meet it with kindness. That was Grace's gift. Not just to Emma, but to them both. The gift of showing up, of staying present, of loving someone even when hope seemed lost. And that, Robert came to understand, was the most powerful medicine of all.